Hey, what's going on, everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech. And today, we're going to be talking about Mono Red Dragon Legends, a deck that I'm very excited to share with you today. As always, at the end of the video, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about this deck? Is there a specific dragon or legendary creature I should have put in this deck that I did not? Or do you have suggestions for upcoming videos? Just let me know in the comment section. So I recently made a deck similar to this on the channel. I made a Mono Red Dragon mid-range deck a while ago, and while this deck is very similar in terms of the core gameplay, the cards that I'm playing in this deck, a lot of them are much different. So the real inspiration for this deck is we were recently talking on the podcast that we do here on the channel, the Alabastard podcast, and Ryan would ask me, what do you think about Mox Jasper? And I'll be like, I'm honest with you, I don't think the card is that good. But then it got me thinking, okay, how can we make this card good? You know, because obviously you have to have a dragon to be able to activate it. Like, what can we do to actually make this card decent? Because it is a Moxen after all. Like, what can we do to make this card playable? Well, we're just going to play a whole bunch of legendary dragons that are going to help us cast this. But the other thing that's really tricky with it too is it's legendary. You can't just always jam 4 because sometimes legend rule and it's a little bit awkward. So why don't we go ahead and pair it with Mox Amber? So we can play a couple copies of Mox Amber and a few copies of Mox Jasper. And then there's a whole bunch of legendary creatures, for instance, like Gadrick the Crown Scourge, that take advantage of being a legendary creature, as well as, at least in Gadrick's case, taking advantage of artifacts. I've always wanted to feature Gadrick here on the channel as well. So I'm like, okay, we'll play a Mox Jasper deck, and then we'll play Gadrick, we'll play maybe a Mox Amber, and we have a really sweet Mono Red Dragon Legend deck. So let's go and hop to the actual deck here. So we're playing 12 dragons in this particular deck. We are playing 3 copies of Gadrick the Crown Scourge, a card that I'm a big fan of in this deck. It's a 5/4 for 3, helps turn on the Mox Ambers and the Mox Jaspers a little bit quicker because it is a 3-drop dragon. And then obviously at the beginning of each end step, create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. We're playing a decent amount of artifacts in the deck, but we can also take out a few creatures with our nice removal, and then we can get a really nice trigger from Gadrick at our end step. So overall, pretty happy to play this card in the deck. We're also playing 3 copies of Etsushi the Blazing Sky, another dragon I'm a huge fan of. It has the really nice death ability there, but it's also a 4/4 flying trampler. We're also playing 2 copies of Varric's Bladewing. I like this card in the sense that, you know, like a 4/4 flyer for 4 is pretty okay. But then you have the kicker 3 to be able to make an additional dragon there, and we're going to be able to make a lot of mana with this stack. It's not going to be hard to be able to do that, so I figured, yeah, we'll play a few copies of Varric's Bladewing. I wanted some 4-drops in the deck, so yeah, that's why we're playing it. We're also playing 2 copies of Dragonhawk, Fate's Tempest. People finally caught on to how good this card is. I know it was floating at about like a $3 or $4 card for quite some time, but now it's floating at $9 because people understand how good this card actually is. Also, bonus bird dragon typing. We're also playing 2 copies of Inferno of the Star Mounts. There's so many ofs in that. And then we're playing 1 copy of Drakuseth, Maw of Flames. It'll make sense why we're playing the 1 copy of Drakuseth in a moment here, but essentially we make a lot of mana in this deck. Spoiler alert, we're also playing 25 lands and a whole bunch of mana rocks. So playing all these expensive dragons is not going to be hard at all in this deck. And yeah, bonus points that all of our dragons are legendary in the deck, which obviously is going to fuel the entire deck. So we're also playing a whole bunch of mana producers. Obviously, we already talked about 2 of them, Mox Jasper and Mox Amber. Pretty self-explanatory. One thing that's nice with Mox Amber is it works well with a few cards that are on this next slide here. Those cards being Sarkhan Dragon Ascendant and 3 copies of Sarkhan Fireblood. Sarkhan Dragon Ascendant, I love in this deck. It makes a treasure token, which Gadrick really loves. And then whenever a dragon enters, we make Sarkhan a little bit bigger, and then it becomes a dragon, in addition to its other types, and gains flying, which is just really sweet. So yeah, it's only till end of turn, obviously, but it doesn't matter because it's going to gain flying, it's going to get a little bit bigger, we'll be able to attack in. Overall, huge fan of Sarkhan Dragon Ascendant in the deck, and I'm a huge fan of Sarkhan Fireblood. We can pitch some cards we don't need, make some mana for our dragons, and then if it sticks around for the emblem, it's basically just game over at that point. We're also playing 4 copies of Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind, a card that I still think is really underrated. Being able to give our dragons haste is incredibly strong, and it helps make mana to be able to cast our expensive dragons. So yeah, I really like this card. We're playing the full 4 copies, where once again works well with Gadrick, and being able to give like cards like Drakuseth as well as Dragonhawk haste is incredibly strong. So that's why I'm playing the full 4 copies of Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind, a card that everyone forgets is in Standard. Yes, you can play dragons in Standard, but you can also play them in Pioneer with Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind. Okay, the next thing we have to talk about is removal. It's relatively straightforward in this deck. We're playing 4 copies of Burst Lightning. We can kick this card very, very easily in our deck. That's why we're playing Burst Lightning. We're also playing 4 copies of Invasion of Tarkir. The card's incredibly strong. Transforms into Defiant Thundermaw, which is also really good for the deck. And then we're playing 2 copies of Dragon's Fire just because I wanted a little bit more removal, and Dragon's Fire is nice because we have all these really, really big dragons in our deck. So pretty easily we're going to be able to, deal a lot of damage. Heck, we have a Dracu Seth in hand. We can deal 7 damage for 2 mana, which is just absolutely crazy. So yeah, huge fan of the Dragon's Fire in this deck as well. Okay, so let's go and hop into the lands here. So we're playing 24. I thought it was 25 for a second here, but no, we're playing 24 lands in this deck. And overall, very similar to the mono red dragon list that we played last time. So we're playing 2 copies of Spikefield Hazard once again. It's a nice tap land on the land side, but then sometimes with Spikefield Hazard, we can pick off an elf for like a Heartfire hero or something really cheap. Definitely a big fan of the Spikefield Hazard. We're playing 4 copies of Ramunap Ruins and 4 copies of Den of the Bugbear as our utility red lands. Ramunap Ruins is nice because we can sneak in some extra damage. Den of the Bugbear is great because we can get frisky with our goblins, and overall, just a big fan of the card in general. We're also playing 1 copy of Haven of the Spirit Dragon and 2 copies of Mutavault as our colorless utility lands. I love Haven just because we can discard all of our dragons with Sarkhan, and then we can buy them back later on if that does need to happen. Mutavault is just great with Invasion of Tarkir, as well as it's just Mutavault. It's a really good card. I'm just playing the 1 copy of Cavern of Souls. I didn't want to play too many colorless lands just because it can be a little bit awkward sometimes if we get a whole bunch of colorless lands and then we don't have enough colored mana to cast like Sarkhan Fireblow, which does require double red, which again Cavern of Souls only makes colorless for it, so I wanted to just play the 1 copy of Cavern of Souls. And then rounding out our lands, we're playing 1 copy of Sukenzen and then 9 basic mountains. And as our spicy basic land of the day, I had to include this mountain. I really love this cycle of the full arts with like the dragons in the background. Just a big fan of these lands, and obviously, yeah, this land is really, really sweet, and that's why I decided to pick this one, and I'm going to pick these up in paper because they are fantastic. Okay, so the next thing we have to talk about is the sideboard for this deck. Overall, it's a pretty straightforward sideboard, but I always love to give the disclaimer, if your sideboard looks a little bit different, that's totally fine. This is just based off of what I personally run into in paper as well as Magic Arena. So, I'm playing 1 copy of Gravedigger's Cage, 2 copy of Damping Sphere, and 2 copies of Unlicensed Hearse in our sideboard. Cage is really good against decks like Arclight Phoenix, or is it Phoenix because they can't bring their Phoenixes back. It's also good against cards like Collected Company. Damping Sphere good against all the different spell singing decks as well as Lotus Field Combo and Nykthos. Hearse, good against any graveyard deck. Simply put, we're also playing 3 copies of Rampaging Ferocidon. I bring this card in, and again, in a number of different matchups. I typically like to bring this in against control decks. I like to bring this in against Rakdos Demons just because they have like Unholy Hanik's life gain and stuff like that. Overall, just a really nice card. I'm playing 3 copies of Abrade. There is so many Corey Steelcutters going around in the metagame right now, and we're tired of dealing with them. So that's why I'm playing Abrade. It's also nice as extra removal, just because sometimes against like the mono red decks and stuff like that, you're going to want some extra removal, and that's why I really, really like Abrade in this current metagame. We're also playing 2 copies of Slagstorm. I always love playing this sweeper effects, but I love Slagstorm in the sense that we can also throw it at our opponent. It is each player, but that's a reason why I really like Slagstorm in the sideboard. Sometimes you use it as a burn spell to close out the game, and sometimes you blow your opponent out by wiping the entire board. And then we're playing 2 copies of Bolt Bend. It's a card that's growing on me in general in decks like this. We're going to have creatures with power 4 or greater, and it's really nice to be able to protect them. Sometimes they're going to go for the throw at our creatures, and all of a sudden we throw back at one of their creatures or something like that, or a burn spell or things like that. Overall, huge fan of Bolt Bend in this sideboard. So the next thing we have to talk about is the tips and strategy for this deck. It's relatively straightforward in terms of how to play this deck, but I want to give a few tips so that way if you do build this deck, in paper or on Magic Arena, you at least, have a little bit of insight and some tips so that way you can play the deck a little bit more effectively. So the first thing I want to go over, you don't have to rush to play a Mox. You don't have to run it out there. Sometimes we're playing mono red. our opponent doesn't know what we're playing, don't immediately throw out your Jaspers and your Mox Ambers. Like, sometimes it is correct to play them early. Like, maybe you don't want them to get duressed or something like that, or your opponent's playing a Thalia. Sometimes you need to play them early, but don't feel like you immediately just go, okay, tap land, Mox, go. Like, you don't have to do that. So yeah, just don't feel like you have to rush it. Keep a little bit of hidden information with your opponent. Sometimes you might be able to drop a Mox Amber or a Jasper out of nowhere, and then there's mana that, oh, I didn't think that they were going to get to 5 mana this turn, and then all of a sudden we get to. The other thing I want to mention with this deck, remember your triggers. It's really straightforward with this deck, and I guess it only applies to people that are playing this deck in paper, but don't forget your triggers. We have Gadrick that triggers at your end step. We have Atsushi when it dies. We have Dragonhawk when it enters or attacks. Just make sure we're remembering our triggers, people. We gotta know what our cards do. After all, we're playing Dragonhawk because it has a really sweet attack trigger. We're not playing as just a 5/5 for 5 with flying. Like, we're not playing just vanilla creatures here. Remember your triggers. They all trigger at different times. Just keep that in mind when you're playing this deck. So the last thing I have to talk about is the budget options, which is relatively straightforward. You can swap out Dragonhawk, Fate's Tempest, as well as the Moxen if you're looking to go cheaper. The Moxen are pretty pricey, to be honest with you. Especially, I couldn't believe Mox Amber, like $55 US a piece. That's absolutely crazy. Half the budget decks I build on this channel are cheaper than that, which is just, I can't believe how high that card is. Feel free to go ahead and cut those. They are not necessary for the deck. You can also swap out Mutable as well as Cavernous Souls. Great cards in their own right, but don't feel like you have to play them. There's a lot of other really good mono red utility lands you can play, or there's also a really good untapped red land you can play. It's called Mountain. Just throw in a few extra mountains. The current list as it's constructed right now is $320 US, which is generally a little bit pricier than the decks that I typically build on here. But you gotta think, we're playing a deck with 4 Moxen and Cavernous Souls with a whole bunch of like pricey commander cards. The fact that this deck is $320 is pretty good overall, but I was able to get the budget list down to $74 US. Again, I trimmed some of those expensive utility lands. I also trimmed Dragonhawk. I swapped it out for, God, I don't remember what dragon I even swapped it out for at this point. I think I kind of beefed up playing an extra copy of like Varric's Bladewing. I also put in that the 3 mana one from, oh, what is it? The Brothers War, that artifact one. I put that one in there. And overall, I still do like how the deck looks. It still functions pretty much the exact same. But overall, I love playing dragons. And I always love being able to feature different dragons than what I typically do. Like, you look at a dragon deck, you're like, okay, Thunderbreak Region, Glorybringer, blah, blah, blah. And it's like the same few dragons. But we got to feature a whole bunch of new cards. And that's what I love doing on the channel, featuring new cards that don't get to see play in every single deck. So yeah, let me know in the comment section below if you have a deck similar to this, or if you do end up playing this deck in paper or on Arena. What do you think about the deck? Is there any cards I should swap out? Just let me know what you think in the comment section. And that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. The deck lists are in the description below if you'd like to check them out for yourself. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, Sermanoki, Michael D, our premium channel member, The Common Colb, and Jeremy P. If you're interested in being a channel member, it starts at $1 US a month, and you gain access to the exclusive Commander Crane Discord, as well as other features here on the channel. So, I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.